This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. This is a sponsored message. I've been using Anchor as my podcast host for a while now, and it's been a pleasure to use. Anchor offers benefits that most other hosts do not. It's free to use, but it also has a collection of tools that allow you to create a podcast completely within the Anchor website or smartphone app. They distribute your show to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other distribution channels without any additional effort on your part, and you can make money from your podcast without any minimum audience size. So you can use it as a more traditional podcast host like I do, but it's also got everything you need to start a podcast from scratch. If you're keen to give it a shot, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. Let's talk about the news. From the Associated Press, ceasefire between Palestinians and Israel takes effect in Gaza. Following 3-ish days of significant violence between Israeli forces and Gaza-based militants, a ceasefire between these groups has taken effect and seems to be mostly holding thus far. 43 Palestinians were killed and 311 were injured, mostly by Israeli aircraft, in the 3 days leading up to the ceasefire, while the Palestinian Jihad militant group, which is backed by Iran, fired hundreds of rockets at Israel. This surge in violence was reportedly sparked by Israel's successful killing of the Islamic Jihad group's leader on Friday, and Israel has said it took this preemptive action because of intelligence about a threat from the group, though they haven't provided details about that intelligence or the alleged planned attack publicly. From Nature. To the moon, South Korea's first lunar mission is on its way. The Korean Pathfinder Lunar Orbiter, South Korea's first lunar mission, has successfully been launched and is in transit to the moon. The orbiter, which is unofficially called Danuri, will enter the moon's orbit in mid-December, taking longer than most moon missions to arrive because it's attempting a low-fuel trajectory, at which point it will use its array of cameras and sensors to collect photos and data about the Earth-Moon magnetic field and gamma-ray bursts from dying stars. It will orbit the moon for about a year, and it will attempt to create the best yet map of the moon's cartography and possibly indicate where elements like iron, titanium, uranium, and thorium might be located while there. And from Reuters, U.S. Senate approves bill to fight climate change and cut drug costs in win for Biden. The U.S. Senate has, after years of stop-start negotiation and weeks of refining the details of a reimagined, stripped-down version of what they originally had in mind, passed a large bill that will inject a bunch of money into climate change-related efforts, lower drug prices, and reduce the deficit over the next 10 years. There's a lot going on in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, and the first thing to note is that the name is misleading. It's unlikely to have any near-term impact on inflation, negative or positive, but it does contain about $430 billion in new spending, a huge chunk of which, about $370 billion, will be invested in renewable energy tax credits, electric vehicle tax incentives, billions of dollars for the development of climate-friendly farming practices, billions for drought-related aid, and new fees for methane emissions and leaks. It also includes some benefits for fossil fuel-based energy companies and for the production of nuclear and hydrogen power, the former of which were important in gaining the support of Senator Manchin, who personally makes a bunch of money from coal and whose state, West Virginia, is up to its neck in mines and coal companies, alongside legislation that will lower drug costs for Americans and increase the funding and capacity of the IRS, with the intention of helping the agency go after wealthy tax cheats. The bill will also raise an estimated $740 billion in new revenue, so it will both pay for itself and generate hundreds of billions of dollars to help reduce the federal deficit. The bill will now go to the House, where it's expected to pass on Friday, and will then be signed, probably in very short order, by the president. This is being seen as a huge political victory for the Democrats, and though pretty much every facet of the left has expressed misgivings about some aspect of the bill, they are mostly also saying it's a good bill, does generally positive things, and gives them something to build upon in the future. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com. And you can support this and other related projects, like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts, at understandery.com.